Hey folks, I'm totally not named Dan, though you can call me that if you want. And in the last video, I talked about a few of the changes that came in with set 5 and some of the printing problems there. But due to some difficulties of my own, unfortunately, it took a little while for that video to come out, and there've actually been a whole load more changes since the set released. So I'm going to be talking about a few of those in the next few videos, including, today, I'd like to talk about this. Mirio Clash deck. Because this has changed a bit as well, including my personal favorite change. It has a deck list on the back with all the numbers of the cards so you can rebuild it easily. And if we hop on over to the other screen, you can see that list in my video. Along with my buddy Cris here, who took it to a locals event.
I did. I very much enjoyed it. It overperformed.
Yeah, so this starter deck, straight out of the box, as I understand it, you went 1-1-1, it was?
That's
Maybe even
correct. Yeah.
slightly better than that, but yeah, you took
Even
second at locals with the out-of-the-box deck.
yeah, like even the matches that I lost were close. Like none of them felt overpowering. So it did feel really competitive right out of the box.
Yeah, and another thing to note here is you will not see any one-of cards besides the character. So while previously you needed 4 copies of the deck to be able to make a perfectly optimal version with the maximum number of copies of all the cards, if you needed them, now you only need 2 copies. And it costs half of what it used to. So anywhere between 10 and 12 pounds now, rather than up to 25.
Yeah, it's a huge improvement. I remember when I pre-ordered it, I found it on a website and it was $9.99. Then you paid for postage, and I thought to myself, this is a steal. There's no way I'll find it cheaper than this ever again.
And then
Little did I.
after postage, you were basically ripped off.
Yes, definitely. So, but it was really nice to have kind of multiples of at least all of the cards apart from the character. I remember buying 2 copies of the Eraserhead starter deck because I wanted more Prone for Dry Eyes, but I still don't have enough. I just can't bring myself to buy 2 more copies.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I remember specifically buying my 3rd and 4th copy of the Eraserhead starter because it
Yeah.
was as cheap as buying 1 copy, or I guess 2 copies because I was buying 2 of them, of the single foil attack in the deck.
Yeah, it was one of the binding cloth attacks. I forget which one, but it is really good. It's difficult to get.
Well, it was Prominence Burn for Endeavor, but still.
It's a very attractive card too, so
Yeah.
it feels good to hunt it down.
The fact that you can just get 2 of the deck and it costs as much as 1 of the deck used to, and have everything as a 4 of or more, is fantastic.
Yeah, it's very persuasive to just buy 2 straight up and not think about it, because you're almost like, well, compared to what I used to pay, I've not lost anything, and I'm getting twice as many cards, so it feels like a great deal. But also good for
there is one thing don't get now, and that is previously you got a random ultra rare in every one. Now you don't get that with your starter deck, but I mean you still get twice as many foils as you used to.
Yeah, I did used to like the random ultra rare. I always did really well out of those, and I appreciate that not everyone else did, but I got like a naval laser beam, Texas smash, Detroit smash, like did very well for those ultra.
So you were getting actual good cards that were probably worth the £10 difference in deck, but most people weren't.
Yeah, I absolutely was. I was very lucky.
So yeah, I just think it's so much of an easier way to get people into the game now as well. I mean, you tell people to get into the game, you tell people, okay, buy this £20 or more deck. Also, you're going to need 2 of them, maybe 4, if you want to be competitive with that character. So it really is just a starter deck and not something that you can use out of the gate. Whereas this, it's buy 1 for a tenner, get into the game, see if you like it, actually have good games that take you 50-50 through a locals event, and then if you like the character, get 1 more if you really want the extra copies of things.
Yeah, I think that the competitiveness of the deck is like an even bigger selling point than the price, if that makes any sense. 'Cause when I was new, which was only a year ago, I started playing, like it was the complexity of building that I found the most intimidating. I wasn't that scared about spending the money, but I didn't trust myself to build at all. And the starter decks, like you say, were not necessarily as competitive as this one. And so I would expect to, although it would be well balanced, it would have the roughly the correct block zones and checks. I would still probably lose to a competent deck builder. And so in this case, I, being the least experienced at our venue, was not facing anybody easy. There was no pushovers. There was no one less experienced than me that I could kind of luck out on. Like each one, I had to kind of grind a little bit, but the deck did a lot of the work.
Yeah, in this one, it was just a case of learn how to play your deck and you will do well.
Yeah. I think it's because most of the cards in it, while they're not necessarily the ultimate optimal cards for their symbol, they work really well with Mirio specifically. They're incredibly niche in a lot of cases. Most other characters don't really care about changing attack zone. But in this case, most of the cards, I would be confident to say all of the cards kind of either give him momentum or change the attack zone or benefit from the attack zone being changed.
Pretty much.
So they
all
feed
his
into
cards do
one
what
of
he wants to do.
Yeah.
Now, of course, there has been a downside to this being such a popular deck, and apparently that's they underprinted it and are now complaining that too many good players are buying it and not leaving enough for the new players.
That is an unfortunate problem to have, but a good one at the same time.
Yeah. And I mean, the other problem is that he's showing up all the time at events. He's doing really well.
Yeah, I'm less thrilled about that. Like, I feel like I had no idea that he would do well. It was probably the deck released on the Friday. I played it on the Tuesday. I don't think it had quite had time to take hold as something genuinely competitive yet. And sometimes it is that slightly bitter feeling of, man, I would have played it anyway, even if it wasn't competitive. And now it is. I look like a cheese player.
Yeah, I know, right? Everyone hated me for playing Pichu in Smash Bros. And I'm just like, I was going to play the self-damage mouse for fun, even if they were still bottom tier.
Yeah. Back in the melee days when you're like, I just like Meta Knight, I promise. Like,
Oh, that was Brawl, but still.
Brawl, sorry.
My favorite thing with Brawl Meta Knight is you get slightly ahead, and then you just tap down B to the tune of Through the Fire and Flames, and you just phase out of existence for the rest of the fight.
Yeah. I love massive hitboxes, really fast strikes. He was great. But in the case of Mirio, he's popular for a reason. He's really good. And to people's credit, I've seen him built quite a few different ways. I don't think it's all just good punches. Although I do favor that. Like I've seen him built a couple of different ways. So
I mean, good punches is good, but at the same time, you don't just build good punches. You build good punches with foundations that actively help the zone-changing gameplay still.
Yeah, well, I liked the starter so much that I didn't really want to deviate from it. But at the same time, I did want to present a little more of a challenge to people, even if I didn't win.
So here's what you ended up playing, and it actually changed a whole bunch of cards from the starter. I was surprised, because I didn't think you did. But we kept in one attack, the Schoolyard Smackdown, and we kept in Lemillion of the Big Three, actually upping it to 3 because it's such a crucial card.
Yeah.
And other than that, I don't think any of the original deck stayed.
It happened very piecemeal. It was literally one card at a time got taken out and replaced. But as you take out one card, you need to balance the block zones and the checks elsewhere, and it kind of happened on its own. But I did like keeping in Schoolyard Smackdown and Lemillion of the Big Three. I don't think they really get played elsewhere very much in a competitive format. But they work really well for me, and I generally find if I draw those two cards, I do better.
So Schoolyard Smackdown, as is, it's a 3/4 for a 5 difficulty. That's not worth it, especially as you're playing it on a 6 to get that enhanced. Discard an attack from your card pool, so actually clear some of your progressive. So that's real nice. Change its zone to the printed zone, and then you respawn, and I guess it becomes a 4/5. But even that's not that great without your character going, actually, this is a punch or slam. It's now a 4/7. You have to deal with it, and it's a different zone again. So actually, it becomes a 5/8.
Yeah, it's niche. It probably wouldn't
Yeah.
really work for anything outside of Lemillion. And like with most of these types of attacks, you'll see it later again with Phantom Threat. Like Lemillion of the big three, like really makes them sing even beyond what we've just mentioned, because it rewards you for each individual zone that the attack will be until it resolves.
Yeah.
Um,
So Phantom
yeah,
Threat, and Phantom Threat responds to the zone being changed. It's hard once per turn. Just says this goes to momentum on resolution. So again, that's an attack that clears card pool, but it clears itself from card pool, and it gives you the momentum that you need for your character's defensive ability. And it maybe lets you do some other things with momentum, like that powerful 2 on Schoolyard Smackdown, or the powerful 3 on itself if you have a second copy. And you do run 2 copies. You'd probably run more if you could, but it's an SR, so...
yeah, I'd probably run more if I had another £70 to drop on
yeah,
it.
exactly.
I pulled these in packs, so I was lucky.
Which is
But
real
yeah,
lucky to get 2.
I did. I was lucky I didn't get 2 different SRs, because that's kind of neither here nor there. So I was able to kind of double down, which is useful.
Yeah. So yeah, the other thing on this is the response. It is a crazy response because the keyword rulings have changed to actually make it work. But after it receives a damage bonus at any point, so not necessarily even during the enhanced step, it gets plus a speed. So you change the zone, you make it a 7 damage. Oh look, it's gained damage, now it's 5 speed. And you give it more damage, more speed other ways. The powerful will set it off. All sorts of things will set it off. So you can get the speed of Phantom Threat quite high, and that's what you actually use this ability for. But if you play it 5 times, you draw a card, and then it gains Flash, ending the enhanced step so that the opponent can't do anything about it.
Yeah, it's great. And it works even better in the starter deck, this particular card, because there's more cards in the starter deck that change its zone over and over. So I'd find there was turns change the zone 3, 4, and sometimes even 5 times. I never get to 5 in the current deck build, but that's okay. A couple of goes at changing the zone is enough to kind of push it over the edge and make it, I think, really effective.
Yeah, the response doesn't really trigger its full 5 times potential. It doesn't gain Flash ever now, but I mean, it's still a real good card. And you want to talk about Lemillion of the Big Three. Lemillion of the Big Three is, enhance your attack gets +1 damage if it's high, +1 damage if it's low, or +1 speed if it's mid. But because that's 3 separate enhances, you can use all of them every attack if you change zones a lot, like you do in Lemillion.
Yeah, I feel like this card could even be good outside of Lemillion, while it's best for him. Like, I think the flat bonus could be useful every time.
So I'm running this in Ball Might specifically because it says your attacks with 5 damage are now 6 damage because they're all high or low, and your attacks that already have 6 or more damage get +1 speed to push them through because they're mid.
Yeah, those maths work really well for him. So that's
it
good.
Does literally everything the character wants it to do. It is a fantastic card in him. The only downside is it's unique, so he can't play 2 copies.
Yeah, and that's why I don't play 4. I really want to play 4. The games where it doesn't come up, I curse myself for not playing 4, because
it pains you definitely.
It's not the be all and end all. And I don't know if it's just a good luck charm, but like when it comes up and I build it, I win the round. And if it doesn't, I normally lose the round. I think that some of it's down to other factors, and it's just been coincidence. In other cases, I find that it just kind of pushes an attack to be fast enough that it just goes beyond the level where it's easy to block. And so more of those
+1 speed, +1 damage. That is actually a surprisingly big stat boost. And you just get that because of your character for free on every single attack once this is down.
Yeah. So it's great in that way. I really do like it. Again, every battle I go back and forth of like, I should have put 4 in. But I think as it is, I would regret it because it would come up multiple times in hand and you would find yourself having to save it to block with. I'm
finding that with Ball Might, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. But I think it's a great addition, and I think we'll see it more often in other decks. It kind of replaces, in some ways, one with nature. Not directly, but it has a similar outcome by the end when all's said and done.
It's not the same power level as one with nature, but it does the same things.
Yeah, it fits nicely in the groove that got left behind.
Yeah.
It doesn't quite reach that potential.
And that's why Ball Might's running it as well. But then we have
Yeah.
Pull No Punches. Pull No Punches is 3 difficulty. And normally I like to go very low on 3 difficulties, because if you get 2 of those in your starting hand, it's real rough if you try to play a second one. But at the same time, this is a crucial card to your deck, because it's Enhanced Destroy, add a punch attack from your card pool to your momentum. So any punch attack but the card you're playing, you just get that out of your card pool, you remove difficulty. You trade a Foundation for 1 difficulty on every single one of your attacks for the rest of the turn.
It's a really nice proposition. It works well in synchronicity with the other attacks that you have that clear themselves. So you find yourself on a really good turn being able to like clear and clear and clear.
Yeah,
and keep
so
your
you back alley Haymaker, you stun 2,
Mm-hmm.
you go through all of that, then you Phantom Threat on a 6 difficulty, change the zone of Phantom Threat, add Phantom Threat to your momentum. During the enhances on Phantom Threat, you add back alley Haymaker to your momentum. Oh look, you just played 2 attacks, you have a clear pool.
Yeah, and then the Schoolyard Smackdown, it's got powerful. Yeah. So along with No Punches, they make a nice way to keep his zone clear. But I also like that you could use it for blocks.
Yeah, so this says attack from your card pool, but it doesn't say that it's the current attack, so it can look at old used attack cards. And at that point in the game, it doesn't care what the attack card was played as. It doesn't have to have been played as an attack. It could have been played as a block.
Yeah, it's
Pull
perfect.
No Punches, you add your block to your momentum, you clear your card pool for less progressive on defense, you gain the momentum, and oh look, you now have momentum for that commit discard 1 momentum. This attack's damage becomes 0.
Yeah, and you can almost hear the opponent groan at this point because maybe you didn't start their turn with momentum and they think, well, finally, my first attack has a chance of going through, or at least the first attack I load up. And then, maybe a couple of attacks in, you play Pull No Punches, you take a punch out of your blocking progressive, you add it to momentum. The next attack, they've got to work their way through his second enhance, which is basically this attack doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well, I mean, it's
really
even
nice.
worse than that, because there are people like Joda who will just throw in all the attacks that, when played, discard the opponent's momentum. They do that, discard your momentum, and you just say, have it back.
Yeah, yeah. I've never managed to make Joda groan before. This deck makes him groan. He likes those decks that kind of have a big explosive attack, and having that momentum sitting there waiting to say no to it really makes him hesitate with that big attack. And so he has to, of course, he finds a way around it. Of course he does. He finds a way to make a feint out of it, like do a big attack, but it's not actually the biggest attack he's going to do. Pull me into using the momentum and smacks me with the real quiz, the real big attack. So he finds his way around it because he's a really good player. But it does make him groan, and I kind of like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's still huge to be able to get that momentum against him after he's discarded it.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you do gain more momentum, there's always Cheerleader. Cheerleader, you're only running out of 1 of, which personally I think's a bit little. I would run 2 just to make sure that you do see it sometimes, but at the same time, it's you lose a Foundation and a momentum, which is a fairly heavy cost. And it just gives an attack flash. It just says no to all of its abilities.
Yeah, I do like it. I think sometimes, because my enhanced steps can be quite long, because I might change the zone, Lemillion of the big 3, change the zone, Lemillion of the big 3. I don't always get the benefit of that flash.
So this is a response on the card being played. You play it before any of the enhances.
Oh, okay. But wouldn't that mean I wouldn't get to go through my enhanced step?
Yes, you use this on your opponent's attacks, so they don't get to go through theirs.
Oh, darn. Okay, now I get it. I was like, I figured the flash would be pretty good on attack. But sometimes, yeah, it'd be great on like a back alley or something like that doesn't need to do the swapping of zones. But yeah, I really like
back
using it
alley
on
needs to do its stun, it needs to do its draw or build.
Well, that's true too. That is true too.
This doesn't help you on your attacks.
No.
And then, yeah, we just got Male Bonding for extra Foundations, Destined for Mainstream for extra check fixing and draw. Self-Sacrifice for if you get too many Foundations and just want more damage or less damage. High Value Target for your blocking, because you do like to block. You block 1, you negate 1, you take out most of their turn. And then we got 2 0 diffs just to do the whole thing of building with the back alley haymaker. And your finish is interesting because it's got a huge effect of draw a card on a flip, not even a commit, on a 0 diff, but it's so specific to get off.
Yeah, very satisfying if it works. You'll feel like you've won the lottery. It doesn't happen often, but it's really nice.
The dream play is start your turn with 2 back alley haymakers in hand. You discard one of them to your review step. Then you play the other one. You check you're finished. Use it to build your finished. Oh, look, now there's a back alley on top.
Yeah, that's the magical Christmas land right there.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
I'd live there happily.
Your finished is such a specific card, it almost never works. But I mean, even when it doesn't work, it's still a 0 diff. It's not exactly a high cost to get the effect.
Yeah, I do quite like the deadlock enhance. Those are rarer, but I was lucky they came up for me a few times.
Oh, a deadlock enhance, you say? I never pay attention to those. Commit one rival foundation? Yeah, okay, you turn off a specific thing. That's all right.
Yeah, it was nice when I had a match with Una the Sheep, and there was a huge amount of foundations going on the other side of the board, and I was lucky enough to have it there. So commit and then go to town with the deadlock foundation, the deadlock enhancers.
Yeah, and then just to look at your other attacks while we're here, we've got Valiant Assault, which everybody knows. Punch combos on a punch, fixes your checks, draws you cards to replace your hand, so that you can keep going even after you've cleared your pool of a bunch. And then, oh look, use the Valiant Assault for your Schoolyard Smackdown, clear it from the card pool.
Yeah, I love Valiant Assault. It always feels like it's going to be a great turn when it shows up. You know, some of the others are a little more niche. Maybe you want something to swap the zone, or maybe you want something out that is a little more dynamic, but Valiant Assault is always just going to be a really nice turn because you draw. And so if you had no hope, maybe hope's on the way. It means if you're doing well, you're about to do better. Valiant Assault is almost good in any situation where I'm going to play an attack before it. So
I mean, you need at least 2 punches to get it off, but even so, yeah.
Yeah.
It turns an okay hand into a great hand, usually.
Yeah, it does. I like it a lot, as everyone does. It's really, really, really consistent.
Yeah. And that then gives you everything you need for this Texas Smash. Because this Texas Smash kind of needs you to discard a card for full effect. And it also needs you to have a punch, which, oh look, Valiant Assault is.
Yeah.
Texas Smash is just a 4 difficulty for 11 damage with extra steps.
Yeah, it's not as maybe as fancy as some of the other attacks, but it's one of the most effective when it goes off.
Yeah, it comes in swinging for 9, and then it buffs your next thing to crazy damage as well.
Yeah. One of the only problems I have found with this particular lineup, and I'd like to work on it, is that like there aren't many attacks that want to go first. A lot of these attacks, they either want to clear your progressive, so you don't really want to play it first, it feels a waste, or they want to combo enhance like Valiant and Texas.
Yeah, or they want to be Phantom Threat, which, I mean, can go first, but if it goes first, it's still not there to combo into anything else.
Exactly, yeah. So sometimes some of these feel like a bit of a non-bow.
So out of your 20 attacks, it's your Hardened Jab and your Back Alley Haymaker that are your openers.
Yeah, and they work great.
Mind, I'd consider running a 4th Back Alley. But I mean, this worked. This worked real well.
I don't know what I'd take out because I don't really want any more 5-check attacks, but I like my Schoolyard Smackdown. So tough choices, but it might just be a bit consistent and a better opener.
Yeah. And then we have one final card, which is a different color to just about everything you've played before. This is Deku's Notebook. Deku's Notebook, unlike most of the rest of these cards, doesn't actually show up in any competitive lists that I've seen. What Deku's Notebook does is Deku's Notebook makes this deck so much easier to play.
It does. When it works, it is the most satisfying thing and the most groan-inducing thing from the opponent because they realize they're done. So you've got enough.
One of the things this character does is he changes zones, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the way you want to play it is you want to just go for the one zone and pressure that zone so the opponent can't stop more than 1 or 2 attacks, right?
Yeah.
But how do you know which zone's best to pressure? You've got to be paying attention to your opponent, seeing what they're doing, what they're holding back, getting an idea of it, knowing what's going to come up, doing what fighting game players would call reading the opponent, right?
Mm-hmm.
This just says, nah, forget all that. You get the knowledge. You look at their hand, you choose a new zone, so you get the bonuses of changing zone again. But most importantly, you just see their hand, you see what zone you should be playing for the entire rest of the turn, and you just go off.
Yeah, it's like cheating at battleships. Like you
Yeah.
feel like this is forbidden knowledge and it's available to you. And like I said, the opponent probably realizes they're done because if they've got like an open block zone, like if they don't have any of a particular direction, Mirio is just going to keep hammering that direction.
Yeah.
And
And I mean, if
the
they
best
do, they'll run out pretty quick of whichever one they had least of.
It will, yeah. It has its downsides though, and maybe I think I need to be better at playing it, but it's not the easiest of checks at a 3, and the block zone is a little rough. So sometimes you draw it and
No,
maybe
you're
thinking
absolutely right.
it's great in an opening hand. Love it in an opening hand. When you're on an attacking turn and you don't want to gum up your progressive that much, it can be a little bit of a difficult decision. But
Yeah.
when it works, it's extremely satisfying. Other times it's kind of been in my hand and I've thought, I don't want it here because it's not a great block, but I don't want to play it because I want to play more attacks.
Well, that's when you discarded a Texas Smash, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Certainly the upsides I think outweigh the downsides, but it's
so
not.
what I would say is the reason this doesn't appear in competitive lists is that if you can read your opponent perfectly, there is very little advantage to this card. However, that is a high level skill, and even then people can mind game you. Whereas if you've got this in play, you just say no. You don't have to play the mind games.
Yeah. I guess at a really competitive level, those players have a skill bar where reading their opponent has become part of their game. And so it might not necessarily offer as much advantage as it would to me, but still, I think definitely one to consider and a really fun one as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Having all that knowledge is just such a sense of power, such a pure rush of it. It is so good.
It is. You watch the opponent's face kind of sink a bit when they realize what it does. That's satisfying also. But
I mean, that's the other thing is on its face, look at your opponent's hand. Doesn't seem like a huge ability. But actually in UniVersus, where zones matter, what your opponent's holding matters, it is one of the hugest effects in the game. That is why so few cards will let you see what your opponent has.
Yeah, in a funny way, it's kind of like tell me the future, and then being able to change the past and affect that future by deciding, actually, I'm not going to attack any of those zones you've got blocks in. You've got highs and mids. I'm going to go low, 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 over and over. The best you'll get is a half, and my attacks might be getting really big. Maybe I'm throwing some powerful in there, and I don't really care if you half block.
But that's the deck. And this is a heavily modified starter at this point. But I mean, even for a modified starter, this is just crazy good.
Yeah, I did have a few games with the starter where I made like slight modifications. So I put Phantom Threat in and took out, I think, a couple of Phantom Clotheslines. I played 2 extra Lemillion of the big 3, so there's 4.
Oh, you played the full 4 for a while.
For a little bit. It improved things a little bit. This was a piecemeal thing that happened in stages. The intention was to try and keep a lot of that starter. There are things that I would still consider kind of putting back in. Like, I think there was a 0 diff in the starter that I would still consider over your finished. I think this is more favorable block zones for me at the moment, but there's other cards from there that could conceivably sneak back in. And if you didn't have like playset of Texas Smash and Back Alley and Valiant Assault, I think be perfectly respectable. You benefit a lot, but mixing and matching a little bit wouldn't hurt.
Yeah, so talking about Back Alley, that stun 2 is an incredible ability. Because it just shuts your opponent down a bit, makes all your attacks do better for the entire rest of the turn. But if you're pressuring the zone they don't have, it doesn't matter whether they can block or not, because they don't have the cards to block with.
Yeah, the EX on it is really nice as well, because Mirio often not has momentum. And so let's say you've put out a string of attacks, you've Valiant Assault and have drawn some cards, and you draw Back Alley Haymaker. Yes, it's normally an opener, but not a bad finisher when you can make it really fast.
But what I'm saying is, that Back Alley doesn't matter nearly as much in this deck as it might in some, because that stun 2 is a bit less valuable. And likewise, when you're +2 damaging every attack, Texas Smash is still great with its +4s. You don't need them.
Yeah
so actually, 2 of the most expensive attacks in this deck you could do away with if you felt like it.
You could, and I forget what they're called in the starter. I think there's 2 that have a really similar name. Phantom something. There's a couple that could easily slip back in, and I've seen people run more competitively alongside these types of attacks.
Yeah, and even this, it's not the most expensive deck ever, but you could definitely make a more budget version if you wanted and still have a great time. And this character is just fantastic. This character tops events constantly.
Yeah, I'm hoping he doesn't receive any kind of nerf. I don't feel like he's that kind of character. I feel like the reason he's topping events is, well, obviously like there's a flexibility to what he offers where people can play it in different types of lineups, but I think he's just really solid rather than exploiting something about the game that needs to be changed.
Well, I mean, even if they do decide he's too good, they're not going to have Murata in before set 6.
True. Yeah,
He's going to have his time in the sun.
he will. When
And
is
he's-
set 6?
Ooh, I think it's around November. We should be
Okay.
entering preview season about now.
Cool. So he's still got a bit of time in the sun. That's good.
Yeah. And I think that's all for this deck. I helped you build this a little bit. I actually didn't do the most. Some of my other friends did rather more to help you with this one than others, but I mean, we constantly have discussions about building. I give you sort of very pointed questions to suggest ways you might go, but also let you figure it out for yourself. And sometimes the decisions you make are better decisions for you than the decisions I would have made.
Yeah, sometimes I know my own mind a little bit. I know what I won't take advantage of, but like you've educated me today on the value of cheerleader. So this happens every week. I always learn something new.
Yeah. And I mean, it's always a good discussion. It's always good you learning to play.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've been training you up for a while. I'm very happy that this has worked out. But
Yeah. Thank you.
if anyone watching this, if you're a friend of mine, feel free to hit me up and I'll do the same for you if you want. Give you all sorts of tips and suggestions for your deck, or if you happen to be subscribed to me on Twitch, that works too. Link
Yeah,
in
this
the
is
description.
sage advice for sure.
Gotta
And
get
you
some
make it
self
look,
promotion in there eventually.
well. You know, are you a YouTuber if you don't self promote?
Yeah, exactly.
Qualify yourself.
Well, I am a qualified judge.
Double qualified judge, qualified YouTuber, qualified Twitcher.
Yeah. That's all for today, and we'll catch you again another time. Hopefully, Cris will continue to do just as fantastically as he has here.
Yeah, I hope so. Most recently, I think people have figured out a few of those tricks, so maybe I need to mix it up a little. But thanks, everybody.